Are you exhausted by all the spin with every news story and don't know what to believe? You're in the right place. I'm Brian Hopkins, the exhausted moderate, veteran, analyst, and politically homeless. I started this publication to give people facts as close as I could determine them, and then add a touch of common sense. Then you get to decide. In this one today, it's disturbing. The facts are clear. The U.S. did something terrible, and you probably haven't heard about it, or if you have, you don't know the whole story. So here it is. Let's get into it. Here's what we know happened. On February 28th, 2026, at approximately 10:15 in the morning local time, a U.S. Tomahawk cruise missile struck Shajara Tayyebe Girls Elementary School in Minab, Iran. The strike occurred during class hours. Between 165 and 201 people were killed. About 9 out of 10 of them were children. A component stamped "Made in USA" was recovered from the debris and traced to a Tomahawk actuator motor by weapons analysts at SIPRI and the James Martin Center. This isn't one source. 7 independent forensic investigations, BBC Verify, Bellingcat, ProPublica, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time, and NBC News all confirmed the same thing. The missile was American. That part is not in dispute. So how did this happen? How does a school full of children end up on a U.S. military target list? Here's what the evidence shows. In 2013, the U.S. intelligence community assessed this school as IRGC affiliated. That assessment was legitimate. The school had documented ties to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The intelligence was sound. But that was 2013. 13 years passed. No one updated the assessment. No one checked whether a school that was IRGC affiliated in 2013 was still IRGC affiliated when the missiles launched. The intelligence sat in the system like a fact, but it had become a fossil. And the targeting memo that would answer the central question, was this school still a military facility on the day of the strike, remains classified. Congress is demanding it. The Pentagon is delaying. Now here's the part that should stop you cold. Operation Epic Fury used an AI-assisted targeting system, a system that processed historical intelligence at machine speed, generating 1,000 targets in 24 hours. That speed is what gave the operation its shock effect. And the team whose entire job was to check those targets, the CivCAS team, which stands for the Civilian Casualty Assessment Team, the people whose specific institutional purpose was to review targeting decisions and flag facilities that may have changed status, had been cut from 10 people to 1. 1 person, 1,000 targets, 24 hours. You don't need a security clearance to understand that math. 10 people checking 1,000 targets is already stretched thin. 1 person checking 1,000 targets is not a review process. It's a rubber stamp with a human being attached to it. That cut was made in 2025, months before the strikes, a deliberate budget action under Secretary Hegseth. And I want to be very clear about something. The AI did not fail. The intelligence officers did their job in 2013. The AI targeting system did its job in 2026. The budget officers followed their orders. The decision makers authorized strikes on the target list they were given. And 165 to 201 children are dead because of it. Nobody had to be incompetent for this to happen. Someone just had to decide that machine speed mattered more than human judgment. At this precise moment, human judgment mattered most. The collection was correct. The processing was correct. The delivery was correct. What was eliminated was the one step that would have caught a 13-year-old mistake. A human being looking at the list, asking the question, is this still a military facility? And that's what institutional failure looks like when everyone involved did their job. Now let's layer in the international response. The UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, that's the institutional body charged with monitoring exactly this kind of event, characterized this strike as a potential war crime. That is a documented fact. UNESCO called it a grave concern. Human Rights Watch, an independent international organization, issued 2 separate analyses calling for a formal investigation. And here's what should trouble every American regardless of policy and party. General C.Q. Brown, the Joint Chiefs Chairman, the most senior military officer in the United States, warned before the strike that cuts to the civilian casualty assessment capacity, and I quote, represent a risk to the institution. That was not hindsight, that was foresight. The Pentagon's own senior leadership flagged the problem. The budget decision to proceed stood anyway. 2 UN bodies, 1 major human rights organization, the Pentagon's own chairman, all on the record. And here's why you may not have heard about any of this. Responsible Statecraft documented that the strikes on Iranian military institutions received 3 to 4 times more coverage than the Minab school strike. The nuclear facilities made front pages. The elementary school story ran in the World section. The New York Times put military strikes above the fold. The strike that killed 165 to 200 children ran below it. I'm not alleging a conspiracy. This is a documented pattern. Media scholars have tracked it in every American military operation since 2001. The rally around the flag effect is real. The tendency to cover strategic success louder than civilian cost is real. And in this case, the result is that most Americans do not know what happened at the Shajara Tayyibeh school. You can't evaluate what you don't know about, and somebody needs to change that. I scored 8 claims across 48 sources. Here's what the evidence supports. 3 claims on a scale of 0 to 100 scored high confidence. The strike happened and the weapon was American, scoring 82 out of 100. 7 independent investigations confirmed the Tomahawk, scoring a 71 out of 100. And the UN's war crime characterization, 78. These are the facts that I'd stake this publication on. 3 claims scored moderate confidence. The CivCast team cuts, 67 out of 100. The outdated intelligence, 58. The media coverage gap, 55. These are well documented but have some evidentiary limitations. 2 claims score low confidence. The rally effect pattern at 52, and whether the school was specifically placed on the target list by the AI system, 48. These are plausible, partially supported, but key details remain unclassified. I show lower confidence claims because transparency about what we don't know is just as important as confidence about what we do. There's one more thing you should see. Secretary Hegseth, the same man who cut the civilian casualty assessment team by 90%, said on the record, quote, "We don't do stupid ROE. ROE, rules of engagement, those are the constraints specifically designed to prevent civilian casualties." After the Minab strike, that same secretary announced a Pentagon investigation into whether the rules of engagement were appropriate. He's investigating whether the rules were appropriate while simultaneously stating that his philosophy is to eliminate the rules he personally considers stupid. I'm not going to tell you what to make of that contradiction. I'm going to tell you that both statements are documented, both are on the record, hold them next to each other, and draw your own conclusion. Now here's where both sides are getting it wrong. The right-leaning coverage emphasizes fog of war, Iranian propaganda, and the unverified casualty numbers, and they're not wrong about some of that. Casualty figures in war zones are hard to verify, and Iran has every propaganda incentive to inflate them. But fog of war doesn't explain 13-year-old intelligence. Fog of war doesn't explain budget cuts to the one team designed to prevent exactly this. That's not fog. That's a choice someone made before the first missile landed. Left-leaning coverage frames this as someone deliberately targeted a school. The evidence doesn't support that either. The school was legitimately flagged as an IRGC facility in 2013. That original intelligence was not fabricated. It was real. The failure wasn't in the original assessment. It was in never going back to check. This was institutional failure by structure, not malice. The system worked as designed. It was designed wrong. And getting the diagnosis right is the only way to fix the problem. This story is early. It's not over yet. Here's what to watch. First, the Congressional Targeting Review. The committees are demanding access to the targeting decision record, the CivCast review that did occur or did not, and the internal communications. These documents will establish whether standard protocol was followed. This is the single most important disclosure still pending. Second, the Pentagon's own probe, set to conclude around May. Watch whether it addressed the CivCast cuts as a contributing factor. If it does not, the probe is not serious. Third, international accountability. The UN has called for investigation. If U.S. personnel face ICC jurisdiction, the political calculus shifts substantially. And fourth, the classified targeting memo. That's the document that answers the question at the center of everything. Was this school still a military facility on February 28th? Congress wants it. The Pentagon is delaying. That memo is the tipping point. Here's my read on all of this. This is the story that will define how history judges Operation Epic Fury. Not the nuclear facilities, not the IRGC naval bases, the elementary school. Because the elementary school is where the system's design flaws became visible, where the decision to trade human judgment for machine speed produced a consequence that cannot be explained away by fog of war, cannot be dismissed as propaganda, and cannot be quietly folded into background noise of a military operation. I don't know yet whether this meets the legal standard for a war crime. That's a determination for courts and investigators, not for me. But I know this. When your own doctrine says that human judgment must remain central to targeting decisions, and you cut 90% of the humans, and that outcome is a school full of dead children, and the UN calls it a potential war crime, and the American public barely hears about it, something has gone wrong that is bigger than one strike, bigger than one operation, and bigger than one administration's budget choices. The full evidence trail, every source, every score breakdown, every contested detail is at the factsandsense.com substack below. I show my work, and you decide. I'm Brian Hopkins. Thanks for listening. If you value this kind of facts first, no spin analysis, and you want to do something about what you have heard just now, consider writing or calling your congressional representative. Also, please, and I'm begging you, this story is so important, share this video. We as citizens have to know about it. And then consider supporting me by subscribing. It's free. You'll get emails and app alerts first for updates on this story and all the ones I'm covering. Thank you, and until next time.